Alarm NBA DFS show with Jon Impemba and James Grande.
What is going on, FA Nation? Jon Impemba here with James Grande. Welcome into the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS Playbook Show. We are here for Tuesday's 5-game main slate. Sir James, my friend, how are we doing?
Doing pretty good. Not a lot of news thus far, but I'm sure that when there's a snake lying in the grass somewhere and it's ready to pounce. So despite not being a lot of news outside of like Minnesota that has dropped during the middle of today, there will be stuff to come. I'm sure of it. But interesting 5-gamer starting at 7 p.m. East, ending at 9 p.m. East. Fun Western Conference matchup in that 9 o'clock game. So obviously fun Dallas San Antonio with Luka and Wemby being on matching up for the last time this year, but ready to get into things for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned the Minnesota news obviously today. Gobert, Naz Reid, and Anthony Edwards all questionable for their matchup today against Denver. So that one would obviously play a big part into where maybe some of the value goes here today. Are we going to have a Luka Garza sighting potentially here this evening for Minnesota? And what it's already going to be a pretty tough matchup against Denver as it is. Again, Houston and Washington. Sitting out the majority of their players here today. We're waiting on the Kyle Kuzma news. If he is in, that's better for us for fantasy purposes. Gives Washington a bit more of a chance to be competitive in this game. Charlotte and Orlando, New Orleans, Brooklyn, and Dallas, San Antonio closing it out there as well for this slate. Appreciate you all tuning in. Obviously, Chris, happy to have you in chat. If you guys want to pop into chat as well, ask some questions, make some comments. You got lineup questions, betting questions, you name it. James and I are obviously here to help you guys out with that here for this evening. Before we do jump into it, just want to give a quick shout. We do have the Fantasy Alarm Bracket Challenge live on site. If you haven't already filled out your March Madness brackets here, make sure you scan that QR code or go to fantasyalarm.com/bracket, and you'll be able to join our free-to-play March Madness bracket. That is a $500 prize pool. The top 50% of entrants split the $500 in that prize pool, and the top 3 also win a year's subscription to Fantasy Alarm. So if you've been itching to become a member of the Fantasy Alarm family and you haven't joined yet already, here is your chance free, just simply by signing up and competing in our Fantasy Alarm Bracket Challenge there. So again, scan the QR code or go to fantasyalarm.com/bracket and just fill out your bracket. If you come in the top 50%, you'll split a $500 prize pool with everybody else that has come in that top 50%. If you come top 3, you have a chance to, not a chance, you will win an annual subscription here over at Fantasy Alarm. So don't wait. Fill out your bracket today with us here at Fantasy Alarm. One last time, again, fantasyalarm.com/bracket to get in this game with us here today. Taking a look at this slate, James, start off at the point guard position. Probably a little bit of a quicker show with it being just 5 games and no major news going on here, at least yet for us to really dive into. But Luka Doncic is 12.5. He's your top price guard here over on DraftKings. Fred VanVleet, 86. Jamal Murray, 83. True point guards here, Irving, Jalen Green, Devin Vassell, Jordan Poole with the hybrid point guard, shooting guard eligibility. On a 5-game slate, we often talk about ownership. We often talk about, whether or not you want to ride the chalk, ride the top plays. On a 5-game slate, if you don't have Luka tonight and he goes for 80, do you have a shot at winning?
Unless you roster Wemby and he goes for 80, probably not. Sure. So, I think there's definitely a discussion to be had. I mean, Luka's getting, per the latest update up on fantasyalarm.com now, he's the 4th highest rostered player, about 27%. So, and that's in large field tournaments. If you're playing single entry, Luka probably closer to 50%, given what that ownership is. You fade him at your own risk. We've kind of said it pretty often. He plays 40 minutes. That's more than everyone else. He takes more shots than anyone else. He has more peripheral stats than everyone else, typically. On a night that he only had 3 assists, he had 60 fantasy points against Denver. Right. So, and that was a game they only scored 107 points. There's really no scenario pace down spots. I mean, low scoring game. Like, there's just no scenario that Luka doesn't pay off unless he gets hurt or is hurt, like as we saw in the Golden State game. So, if you land on Luka, then you're probably going to be happy with it. To be fair to the Spurs, they've been better defensively since really since Wemby moved to center. But like, that's why, right? Like, because they have Wemby starting at center where he should. So, I think Luka is an elite play if you want to get to him. I think Van Vliet is an elite play. John, I find this interesting. I kind of wrote everyone off in the Western Conference that weren't in the top 10. Did you know that the 5 in a row, the Houston Rockets have won 5 in a row, are now just 3 games back of the Golden State Warriors for the final play-in spot?
I mean, it's going to be competitive. We kind of figured that may end up being the case, right?
No, I didn't. I did not think that was going to be the case. I wrote everyone off. I said the top 10 now, or the top 10 going to be, and hey, Houston 5 games in a row and now 3 games back. I just found that interesting.
Sure.
No coincidence, like Van Vliet playing big minutes, no Şengün. It's been 49, 47, 48 fantasy points for him. So love the spot against Washington if that game can stay competitive. And Jamal Murray, really tough spot overall, but in games in which he shot poorly, 3 of the 3 straight games under 40%, 2 of them he's ended with 43 and 48 fantasy points because he's so good peripherally. So I have no problem getting to any of the top just point guard specific plays. I'd probably rank them out as they're priced.
Sure. Going down the list here, Trey Mann obviously pops up as questionable now for Charlotte. We don't really love attacking Orlando all too often here, but getting Vasilij Micić at $5,500, likely back as their primary point guard if Trey Mann is out tonight. Does that interest you at all here for some value?
I think it would probably have to, just given what we know about Charlotte's rotation. Like, they're running 8 players. They're not like, nobody is cracking the rotation that is like outside that 8. So what happens if Trey Mann doesn't play? Does Nick Smith get run? But does Nick Smith isn't going to get 30 minutes like Trey Mann has gotten. So you have to assume Micić mid-30s. I would have interest. I know it's a tough spot, but because they're the depleted nature of Charlotte, I think Micić at 55 makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. From there, I think Trey Jones plays at 56 as well, just a little bit above him. Knowing the minutes that he's been getting lately, the game flow of that game at the pace and the total, I'm liking some Trey Jones. Mike Conley is going to be interesting if everybody gets ruled out here tonight. We did see Nickeil Alexander-Walker play a whole bunch of minutes.
Yes.
So, that's where most people probably land as well. But, you got to think Mike Conley is going to fit into that picture somewhere here tonight as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota is a wild card because you said it. They went small. Like, they only gave Luka Garza 11 minutes yesterday. And after the Naz Reid injury, Luka Garza saw 11 minutes. Anderson played over 30. NEW played over 30. Jaden McDaniels played over 30. Is that the direction they're going to go against Jokic? Right? Like, now, I say that, but we saw what the Lakers did in the postseason last year. They guarded him with Hachimura, right? We saw it this year in the highly anticipated Joel Embiid versus Nikola Jokic matchup. What did Philadelphia do? They used Tobias Harris as the primary defender. Teams think that they can use smaller defenders to guard Jokic because Hachimura was mildly successful at doing it in the Western Conference Finals that they lost 4-0 in. So it wouldn't surprise me if Garza didn't start and they did just go small and they did
McDaniels at the 5.
Yeah, McDaniels guarding Jokic or Anderson guarding Jokic just because that's what people think they could do. And that's barring everyone sits, right? That's just that says Reed, Gobert, because Gobert thinks he can guard him, and that's the infamous Jamal Murray.
Right.
Bro, I heard him say, "Bro, I already got 40 on you." Yeah. But if they're all out, you're right. Mike Conley is a little bit interesting. Now, 27 minutes on the front leg in a competitive game. Do we see 32? We saw 30-32 on a back-to-back earlier this month. I think this is a game where you see Conley extended because a very pivotal point for both teams in the Western Conference standings, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a swing game. Dude, Minnesota and Denver are tied for the 2 seed right now, with Minnesota having the edge currently based on the tiebreaker. So I suspect Minnesota's healthy or healthy-ish to play because you saw Edwards leave the game after the dunk and then come back and play, and he went nuclear again.
Yeah.
But if they're all out, yeah, Conley's interesting. I do think they play because, we've seen Edwards play through basically.
I agree with you. For some value, we work our way down. There are the Washington guys here. Butler is point guard only. Davis is shooting guard, small forward, so you not here at the point guard position. Do you have any interest in Washington here?
I mean, like Butler's been a pretty good fantasy point per minute guy this year. I'd have mild interest. He's over a fantasy per minute technically on the year, but I don't think 22 minutes is. If the game's competitive, I don't think we see 22 minutes.
Right. And he is getting some ownership here tonight. It's around 16%. So, he's not the highest rostered wizard on the slate. We'll talk about him in a moment. But, Washington value getting a little bit of love here today. And those numbers could change drastically if Kyle Kuzma ends up being ruled out or confirmed ruled in today. Maybe we get a little bit more movement there. But at least for now, that's where we're sitting. Moving over at shooting guard, should Anthony Edwards play tonight? Certainly don't mind getting to him. Again, there isn't a value that if you wanted to jam Luka and Edwards or Edwards or Wemby, you can do it. Is this a great spot for Minnesota, given who they're missing against Denver? Not really, but I mean, Anthony Edwards is collecting souls at the moment. So,
yes.
I don't know if he's looking at his calendar today and he's got Nikola Jokic on his calendar, but I also want to point out that I believe I tweeted about this, and now I'm trying to recall if I have this correct. They asked Anthony Edwards about doing a world versus USA all-star game, and someone mentioned Jamal Murray, and he's like, well, Jamal Murray's not an all-star because he's talking about I feel like I got to go back through my Twitter timeline and get that quote correct, but there could also be a little bit of thing here in this.
Bad blood. I mean, that wouldn't be surprising. I mean, he is factually correct. Based on this year, Jamal Murray was in fact not an all-star.
Yeah.
I'm just saying he is not incorrect on what he is saying. Now,
so here did Mark Spears tweeted out. T-Wolves All-Star Anthony Edwards was asked if All-Star game should be USA versus the world. Edwards responded that Joker, Luka, Embiid, Giannis, Towns, and Shai weren't enough to fill an international team. When asked about Jamal Murray, he said he's not an all-star.
Well, he is not wrong. He is not wrong. There's nothing incorrect about what he said about this year specifically.
Right.
Now, Jamal Murray has not been able to fulfill the games played quotas in the last few years, and
right.
This year again, slow start, wasn't playing heavy minutes, missed some time. If this version of Jamal Murray was going for the whole year, he'd be an all-star.
Right. Jamal Murray has never been an all-star either.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just saying, he's not wrong.
So I'm just wondering if maybe Jamal Murray has, maybe has this circled on a calendar somewhere. Not an all-star. Okay, I got it. Understood.
Well, I mean, conversely, I'm sure Gobert heard the quotes that Murray made about him, right?
Sure.
Bro, I don't double. And then, or he said what? Gobert, I heard Gobert say, no double. And Jokic responded, bro, I already have 45 on you.
Right. But that's a story that actually happened. This is Anthony Edwards. Again, if you want to read it one way, it's him saying, well, Jamal Murray's not an all-star. So why are we even discussing him on the international team? Right.
Sure.
So anyways, had this day circled down on the calendar. But Edwards obviously is fine if you're able to spend out to him. Kyrie, to your point, for the majority of these stretches, hasn't been able to pay off his price tag, but the last 3, one of those games without Luka, obviously, he has been much improved here. So if you think he can give you the 50 plus at 92 against San Antonio, certainly can run to that. But you have Jalen Green and Devin Vassell for me, and Jordan Poole, your second or third highest rostered player tonight, all in the mid tier here.
Yeah, I mean, if Vassell's going to play 85 minutes again, then
Yeah, I saw that DraftKings
It's
for
really
whatever
hard.
reason
It's really hard
has,
not to like.
has their minutes wrong. It's
I mean,
only
dude,
the Spurs. I don't know what happens.
I mean, look, if Vassell's going to play 85 minutes, lock him in. I mean, we saw Josh Hart play all 48 last night. Shout out Josh Hart, triple double again. Salute to you. I love Jalen Green here, and that's scary because we know anytime Houston is in the forefront of our minds, it's a letdown, right? But Jalen Green's been the biggest beneficiary, sans Şengün, right? Him and Van Vliet obviously have been the top two dogs. But Jalen Green, no Şengün, Whitmore, Eason this year. 33.6% usage rate, clears anyone by a large margin, almost 10% higher than anybody else. 1.18 fantasy points per minute, also first on the team. And then you factor in, back-to-back 50 burgers for Jalen Green. Dude, usage rates the last 3 games, 27, 29, 30%.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 26 and 37 actual the last 2 games for Jalen Green. The rebounding rate, I was looking at some props earlier because I have the Underdog and Sleeper articles. The potential rebounds have been insane for Jalen Green. No Şengün these last 3 games. I don't think that's a coincidence, especially because they're playing a lot of small ball. Like Jabari's barely getting over 30 minutes, right? Landale only played 17 minutes. Jeff Green played 28 minutes. Like, there's a lot to like for Jalen Green here. 54, 51 fantasy points. Like, wouldn't surprise me to see Jalen Green put up another 50 ball. So I love Jalen Green, Vassell for sure in tournaments. And Jordan Poole just showed last game, like, you could just play him in any scenario. If there's no Kuzma, or even if there is Kuzma, he's going to start and he's going to play all the minutes, or not all the minutes. He's going to take all the shots and then he's going to play all the minutes until there's no more minutes to be played because it's a blowout. So yep. I think both Poole and Green are a little ahead of Vassell for me, but Vassell's definitely an interesting tournament pivot off.
Okay. Working our way down. Trey Murphy, someone that you and I have been playing a lot of lately. Some days he booms, some days he doesn't. On the road against Brooklyn, up to $6,100 now. NAW's at $5K here. There isn't obviously a smaller slate, so there's not like a ton of depth at these positions here. So, for me, when kind of looking at this position, if it wasn't the guys we talked about, Murphy, NAW, and then you've been on KCP a lot this year. He's $4,200, and then Johnny Davis is at 36.
Yeah, KCP is like a fine, like, last piece in. I have $4,200 left. That's where I'm gonna get to because, like you mentioned, there isn't like a ton. It is worth, I guess, mentioning Jordan McLaughlin played 22 minutes yesterday, John. He's obviously been more involved in the rotation of late.
Sure.
And we didn't mention Jose Alvarado at point guard, but same thing can be said about Alvarado as well. And then you have these random Washington guys. If no Kuzma's out and you do think a blowout happens, like Johnny Davis, former lottery pick, who has the ugliest looking shot I've ever seen in my life there, and Jules Bernard, who just out of the clouds played 24 minutes. Yeah. I mean, so either of those guys would probably be like fine lineup filler.
Yep. Small forward here. Again, a lot of these guys have dual positional eligibility, but Brandon Ingram at 77, Franz Wagner at 71, Mikal is at $6,900. Eamon Thompson at 59, I think is pretty interesting. Over on FanDuel, he is way expensive. He's like almost 8K. And you're getting him at $5,900 here. Any interest in Eamon tonight?
I didn't like seeing that he's getting so much ownership, and that's kind of has that stuck per recent update. He's
still as of right before we went live, dude. 43% for Eamon Thompson over on DraftKings tonight.
Like, I understand it's Washington. And I understand $5,900 is a pretty good price if he's going to get like 26 to 28 minutes. Which
he got 28 in the blowout win over Washington 2 games prior and had 46 fantasy points. I think that's also driving this here. Because he's going to play, right?
He's going to start.
Yeah.
He's going to start.
Right.
My only
he's not 5K anymore. He's almost 6.
I know, and he's 45%. And we've also seen him in the first game without Şengün against the Spurs. He only played 23 minutes.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not saying Udoka's going to, like, pull the plug on him. They're winning. They've won 5 straight. He's obviously been a great player over the last 2 games. But what if we get 23 minutes out of him?
Sure.
And then he's 50% owned. You know? I get it. I'm not saying I'm not playing him. I'm also just because he's a good fantasy point per minute guy. I mean, 22 fantasy points per 22 fantasy points per minute or 22 fantasy points per game and 20 minutes per game this year.
Yep.
Right? That's a good
He's
number.
been good. I agree.
So I just 59, like you said, it's just not the same price.
Right. And the other thing is, again, it's more like if you're going to pivot off of that, your pivots for price here, you're looking at a Murphy or Sohan or Keldon or Kyle Anderson.
It's Minnesota. You're like playing the long game where you're like, all right, I'm going to just hope that the stars are out for Minnesota.
Yep. That's what it is, right? And honestly, if those guys end up being ruled out, you probably see some of that ownership come off, right? You think, and more ownership ends up going to the cheaper Minnesota guys down here. So
now I don't think that's going to happen, but like that would be a sharp. Listen, it's a sharp and this is one of those things. Like you're playing Champagny here, 4,200. You can obviously play Amen Thompson at 5 positions, most because he's point guard, small forward. He has the best eligibility on the board, like whatever. But like, it's sharp. If you think Gobert, Naz Reid had a head injury. I'm shocked he left immediately ruled out, right? Like,
I don't think he plays tonight.
So you have no Naz Reid, potentially no Gobert. Gobert hasn't played in a few games. Is he going to play full capacity if he does? Anthony Edwards, I'm assuming plays, but like, what if 2 of those 3 sit, and now you have Kyle Anderson, almost guaranteed 35 minutes. Obviously not like as good of a spot, but I would say you would have an infinitely higher minute ceiling out of Kyle Anderson than you do Amen Thompson right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think it's a pretty sharp thing if you fade a 50% Amen Thompson for like potentially 38 minutes out of NAW or 38 minutes out of Kyle Anderson. But that's a decision you're gonna have to make early because Houston Washington is the first game of the slate and Minnesota is locks at 9. So
right. Champagny obviously is your highest rostered player. We knew that was going to be the case.
The Washington one.
Yep, the Washington one. We assumed this was going to be the case. Yep. Do you think it holds true if Kuzma is back? Like, do you think he's as productive if Kyle Kuzma is healthy in this game?
As productive.
Worth $4,200 if Kuzma's active.
Yes, I think worth 4,200. I still think that there's a very high minute ceiling. No Denny, no Koulibaly, no Jones. They're likely going to go. They did start Holmes next to Kuzma a couple games ago.
I think given who they're missing, they probably go traditional big here.
Holmes starting Kuzma, who's Baldwin, Poole, Champagny, Kispert,
Kuzma,
Holmes would be the starting 5 that I would guess. So in that, and Champagny again started and then closed in a blowout. Like he did not come off the floor. So I would assume that remains the case, regardless of Kuzma being in or out. So I think of like all the Washington value is the safe and that reflects in the ownership.
Okay. Power forward position here. I'm not really in on Banchero at 9K because Zion is 87. So rather just take the $300 savings and play Zion here against Brooklyn. I know obviously Charlotte poses a better matchup for Banchero. 2 games against them, only averaging 40 fantasy points though. Hasn't cracked 50 in a month. So 9K feels a bit much for me here. I'd rather just play Zion if I had to pick. Definitely playing Kuzma if he's in this game as well. And then Cam the Man saying death taxes in a Jabari Smith letdown game. $6,900 for Jabari. Went for 24 fantasy points in 26 minutes against them last time out in the blowout. I would assume the blowout's the thing that keeps us from Jabari Smith here.
Dude, he didn't. That wasn't even a blowout till the end of that game.
Sure.
Like he just wasn't playing. They went Landale, which is incredibly annoying. And then the Cleveland game's not on the main slate. So he goes for 40 fantasy points. You can't even play him, right? I don't want to play Jabari Smith. Like I do, I get it, dude. But like, even when you look at the numbers, not 0.9 fantasy points per minute, that's fine without Şengün, Whitmore, Eason, but
Yep.
he's almost $7,000. So his point nine is better for like a guy 5K range.
Well, we're getting the news now. Kyle Kuzma out tonight.
Okay, so all
Trey Man in, by the way.
Trey Man in, Kuzma out. So we're gonna get the same starting lineup from Washington, I assume. The lineup we just mentioned minus Kuzma plus Patrick Baldwin. That would be my assumption. So we're gonna see next ownership update. Baldwin's ownership skyrocket. He's gonna be one of the highest. It's becoming more possible to get the double spend.
Yes,
like two of the stars
as we add more under 5K plays, under 4K plays to the board for sure.
I will say though, like if you don't go that direction and you did want to go what you said, do like a Luka Zion or Wemby Zion. I love Zion Williamson today. Like he's about 15% rostered. You mentioned the weight loss. I don't think that's a coincidence in terms of the minutes played because this has never been Zion. Like we have never seen 34 to 36 minutes every single night from Zion Williamson, like no matter what. And even in blowouts, Zion has that rotation where he early subs and then comes in at the end of quarters and plays it. I mean, they lost by 30 or 21 to Cleveland, and he played 35 minutes. Like they won by 20 to Portland. He played 34 minutes. It's his rotation pattern. So like even in these blowouts, Zion's having big games. 50 fantasy points per game over his last 5. The peripheral stats have been amazing, and that's what we've asked for, right? Put it all together, and this is like the player you can be. And so I love Zion 87. The short I put on our YouTube channel today was about Zion. Brooklyn's allowed 114 points per game over the last 6. No coincidence, John. That's since Cam Thomas has been back in the lineup for Brooklyn. You know, good offensive player, not bad defensive player. Also, Dorian Finney-Smith questionable. Like, if there's no Finney-Smith, like, I mean, Cam Johnson. Probably Cam Johnson starts and Lonnie Walker probably gets extended. But like either way, no Finney-Smith, and not that Finney-Smith could stop Zion to begin with, but like who in the world is going to stand in front of that?
Better defensive player for sure.
So I'm like highly interested in Zion tonight.
Once we get into like the 6K and below tier, I mean, do you have interest in Kispert maybe for a bounce back game here? Again, you mentioned Cam Johnson. There are other Minnesota plays. Sohan at 58. Like, is there a go-to for you? Or are you just plugging Baldwin in now at 4K? Knowing that the minutes are going to be there?
Plugging Baldwin, but I'm okay, like, getting to someone like a Kispert. Dude, he was just bad, right? Yeah. Like, they were all bad. Jordan Poole was good. Champagny was good.
So basically everybody else sucked, right?
Dude, and they faced Boston without everyone. Like, that's your, like, game where, like, oh, I finally have, like, nobody on the floor with me. I'm going to flourish. It's against Boston? You know, like, what are you supposed to do in that scenario? So, I'm fine going back to Kispert. I don't like the eligibility. I will say that. I don't like that we're now just suddenly power forward only. Same with Dylan Brooks. Like, why are we just suddenly power forward only? Both of them. But I'd be okay. Like Kispert, San Antonio guys. Minnesota's obviously a little bit interesting to me.
We had some initial interest in Isaac, but I have to imagine Baldwin now just usurps that, right?
Yep. I mean, I think you could probably get away with playing them both, realistically.
Sure.
But I think that is not optimal, just given.
Agreed. Yep, I agree. Center here again. If you want to spend up for the Joker tonight, you can. I'm just, as I mentioned before, I'm just going to play Wemby. 76 last time out, giving you a bunch of 70s of late. We're seeing ceilings, up-tempo game, great matchup. Like everything is saying, play Wembanyama tonight for cheaper over the Joker here.
What if there's no Rudy?
I still think I play Wemby because I don't know if there's no Rudy. I mean, does Jokic play more than 30 minutes in this game? Like, I don't know how competitive Minnesota's going to be only with against Denver here.
They've been. I mean, like I know what you're saying, but that's a really good team. Like Minnesota's a really good team.
Yeah, Denver. I mean, I don't know, a full strength Denver squad versus you're down to just a much smaller.
I mean, they beat the Clippers by almost 20. I know the Clippers are going through like a tough stretch.
I said we've seen the Clippers lose to a lot of bad teams this year.
I know, but like on the road, lost by 20 to the Clippers without Gobert. They were competitive in LA against the Lakers. I'm not fully.
We're talking about like the number
the defending
one
champs.
team.
I know. No, agreed. I'm just saying it's not in Denver. This is the first home game Minnesota's had in a while.
I'm more skeptical on Joker here. I would not pay 12-1 for him.
Okay. I would in tournaments. I'm not like saying I'm prioritizing him over Wemby or Luka. I'm just more so asking.
Okay. Yeah, I'd rather play if I'm spending up for that. I'm playing Luka and I'm taking the discount on Wemby personally. And then at the center, kind of gets money after that because again there are a lot of questionables or outs already now. Claxton's at $6,600. Nick Richards is getting minutes. He's 57. Gwendolyn Carter, the opposite side of that matchup. We thought Gafford had that big game, but now he's going against Wemby in that spot. I didn't really care for much, honestly. I just kind of plugged Wemby and moved on here.
I would be okay with getting to Gobert if he was in, just based on the minutes for Gobert has been amazing and the production as well. If he plays, especially if there's no Naz Reid. I mean, they just don't have other options. He's probably going to play around 40 minutes. Claxton's been good most nights. 36 fantasy points and like 5 of his last 7. So I'd be okay getting to Claxton in like a spot where they're not going to play Joe Val and they're going to play a lot of Larry Nance. So yeah, I'm okay getting to some Claxton. Richard's fine. Wendell Carter safe.
Well, no, a Barlow question here with Zach Collins.
Dude, he is interesting. I mean, I don't know if it's like to the point where I'm comfortable playing him because Wemby's not on a cap anymore. Like it's a little different where
you play Barlow hoping that San Antonio gets blown out. Wemby plays 26 minutes, right? Like,
or he gets hurt, or like, but like imagine like you're playing someone to get hurt is like not. If Wemby plays 33 minutes, the cap Barlow plays is 35 or 15. Sorry. If he plays 31, then you get 17 minutes out of Barlow. Like Pop is very straightforward with his center rotation, right? Like every minute that Wemby doesn't play, it's been Zach Collins. So
if Vukovic starts tonight, would you play him at 3K? Not on the injury report, is available potentially here today.
If he starts, sure.
Right?
Dude, I mean, like, sure. I don't even, to that extent, I don't even hate Rashawn Holmes at 4,700. He's been, like, the Boston game was almost a fantasy point per minute. And Chicago, he was in foul trouble. Like, I wouldn't even hate Rashawn Holmes. Like, whoever the starting center is for Washington, they're so shorthanded that, like, if we saw Rashawn Holmes play 36 minutes against Charlotte a couple games ago, right?
Yeah. All right, so we start here. We have $4,400 a player.
Champagne.
Yeah, let's see if we can make this work. Champagne, Baldwin.
Like the right one.
I did. I got the right one. 46. Got Davis. 36.
Right, and Mamu could play random 2 to 3 minutes. So like,
I want Boban. I do want Boban, man. Boban was great.
Boban was a wild roster because like all you needed was like those 13-minute starts for Boban, and you'd get like 24 fantasy points.
Seriously,
Boban has been an insane DFS roster.
DePrince, it's Wemby for me tonight. I'm playing Wemby on FanDuel.
Yeah, especially on FanDuel, DePrince. Like we've talked about this a lot with Luka. Like you don't get the same perks using Luka on FanDuel as you do on DraftKings. And you could just play one of the Houston point guards over on FanDuel as well.
Right. 5K.
Playing Butler over Johnny Davis. Yeah, I mean, it's a low floor on both fronts, but I'd probably play Butler over Johnny Davis.
You play Butler over Johnny Davis?
Probably. I think Butler's been a better fantasy per minute guy this year. Dude, Johnny Davis, like, salute to him for getting the bag and being drafted in the lottery and stuff. And maybe he'll pan out to be like a fine player, but oh boy.
Does TJ Warren get extra love here today or no?
It would have to be a scenario where everyone was out.
Okay.
He only played 8 minutes last night.
$5,200.
Jared Butler is a 1 fantasy point per minute guy. That's 240 minutes this year. So I would just lean
19.
But 19. You got to remember, it was 19 against Boston.
I know.
So if you think this game stays competitive, Richaun Holmes is definitely in play.
I mean, do you think it stays competitive? Do you think he stays out of foul trouble?
I think that we know how bad Houston is on the road. I know that they've been better on the road lately. They've won a couple games in a row on the road. They're still like 9-24.
5,800 util here. Trey Jones?
Sure.
Or I mean, obviously Trey Man's in, so probably knocked Micic down, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that's probably
all right. Example lineup: jamming in 2 studs. Luka, Caldwell Pope, Champagny, Baldwin, Wemby, Butler, Alexander Walker, and Jones. Again, no Kuzma tonight. No, so we have the usual or the recently usual starting lineup for the Wizards, so you know where those minutes are going to go. Obviously, there's a low floor to this lineup, but there's also 2 guys that can go for 150 combined points or more, actually, even depending on the type of games we get out of them. So just an example for that. The playbook is out. We'll be making some updates, obviously, with the news as it comes across the wire. 7 o'clock. There we go. 7 o'clock roster lock here tonight. I muted myself for this slate. Before we go, though, again, one last time, everybody, that we have you here. Fantasy Time running a free bracket challenge contest. Go to fantasytime.com/bracket or scan the QR code there. It's a $500 prize pool that will be split among the top 50% of the finishers here in our contest. So, if you come in the top half, you're going to win some money. Plus, the top 3 win an annual subscription package. You'll get access to all of the content we have over at Fantasy Alarm. Again, this is completely free to sign up and play. You just have to register your account and be able to enter in your bracket here today. So scan the QR code or go to fantasyalarm.com/bracket and join our March Madness bracket challenge. That starts Thursday, I think, right? Is the NCAA tournament. So make sure you check that out for everybody. And of course, you see the scroll on the bottom all stream long. If you don't already have your fantasy baseball draft guide, sign up there as well. You get your draft guide and your cheat sheet. The cheat sheet has auction rankings, a draft grid, player rankings, rookie rankings, dynasty rankings, sleepers, busts, and rookies, the whole shebang there. Go to fantasy.com/win and you can sign up and download the cheat sheet, the draft guide, and everything included with your all-pro package there as well. For now, get us in the Discord. Be on the lookout for any updated news that comes across the wire, and we'll talk to you all tomorrow.